Good evening, everybody, and you're very welcome to our safety seminar this evening. And I'm sure Sarah, who is going to take us through the presentation, she put it together for us and will give us lots of valuable tips how to keep our association and our sport safe going forwards. I guess it is important that everybody takes responsibility for their own safety and not rely on others to make everything safe for us. So it's up to ourselves to do our little bit so that everybody can enjoy what we like doing in our sport. So I'll hand you over to Sarah now, who will take us through the presentation. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Tony. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Safety in the Club seminar. The AIRC guys asked me to present this, and I will start going through the presentation now. Just the agenda we're going to look at today is around the aims. So what we're going to look for from this presentation, an introduction to me, who I am and what my background is, what is the law, legislation, the safety information from AIRC, roles and responsibilities, hazard identification, risk assessment, and how you should be running your activities, and just some points to remember when you are running your activities. So the aims from this seminar is that you will understand the role of the safety officer within the club committee, be able to carry out a risk assessment for all of your activities, know the AIRC requirements for any activities, and know where to find the information on the AIRC website. So just a quick introduction to me. My name is Sarah Malone. My primary qualification is in engineering. I did a master's degree in health and safety about 10 years ago. I'm a level 6 trainer. I work for a large US multinational as a European Environmental Health and Safety Coordinator. I am a riding club member, and as you can tell from my accent, I am from the northeastern region. My email is there if anybody has any questions or comments that they would like to make after. And I aim to be practical with all health and safety matters. I always have people coming up to me in work asking me or telling me that they can't do something because of health and safety. And that is not the case. We need to look at how things are done and come up with solutions and controls so that we can work with activities. So what is the law? Just to give you a background on what the law is on all activities that take place within Ireland, there is currently a two-tier system that exists in Ireland. So we have common law. So this is a part of your insurance. So this is what you take insurance for. So your civil claims and as a part of the law of negligence. It is also known as judge-made law. And it's the rules are made by judges, and a rule leads to precedent. So if a judge rules in favor of somebody doing something wrong, it leads to a precedent, which means that the judges will go back on this law to make judgments in the future. All of these cases can be won or lost on your paperwork. So it's very important that you document everything that you are looking at. You also have statutory law. This is our legislation, and this is passed by our governments. And this would be our acts, which is our primary legislation, and our regulations, which is secondary legislation. So the acts tell us what we have to do, and the regulations tell us how we're going to do it. The statutory law is usually coming down from EU government guidelines. Responsibility for all of this lies with the people who have the power to make the decisions. So in our case, it would be our committees would be responsible for complying with the law. So we're asking if something goes wrong, the questions that are asked by either the government or the insurance companies will be, could control have been exercised to prevent this incident? and it is based on risk. So was this incident foreseeable? So we have to prove that we have done everything in our power that is considered to be reasonably practicable. Reasonably practicable, or if you see it in the shortened to so far as is reasonably practicable. This involves weighing a risk against the trouble, time and money needed to control it. And just an extreme example would be, is to spend 1 million to prevent 5 staff suffering bruised knees is obviously grossly disproportionate, but to spend 1 million to prevent a major explosion capable of killing 150 people is obviously proportionate. And all of this is based on the general principles of prevention. So what you would have if it goes to court under civil, which is where you have your insurance, would be contributory negligence. So if someone at one of your activities has not done something that you have asked of them or advised them to do, and they have had an injury, it can go to court and they can be seen to be contributory negligent, which means their claim or their settlement figure will be less. Criminal is where we have not complied with the law and somebody has been seriously injured or fatally wounded. Failure to comply with the law carries the risk of potential fines and or imprisonment on indictment. So that's where you're brought to court by the DCP. So just on legislation, there's a lot of legislation that we have to comply with, but the main one we're going to look at today is the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act. The Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act takes a preventative approach to reducing accidents and ill health. The main provisions, it is used to be the main provisions for securing and improving the health and safety and welfare of people. And the Act sets out the requirements for the control of safety and health, the management, organization, and systems of work necessary to achieve these goals. These are responsibilities and roles for all concerned. Okay, again, what we're looking at again is around the Health and Safety and Welfare Act 2005. So training and information should be provided to everybody regarding safety and health, and it must be given in a form or manner and language which is likely to be understood. We must provide appropriate protective equipment and clothing to volunteers, and it should be at no cost to them. We need to appoint one or more competent person to specifically advise the employer on compliance with the safety and health laws. And competence is defined as somebody who has qualifications and or relevant experience. And we must carry out risk assessments on all of our activities. Section 80 of the Act deals with the personal liabilities of directors and managers. And this is we cannot take out insurance to cover us for this. And it is defined as where an offence has been committed by an undertaking, be it the committee, and or has been authorised or consented to, or is attributable to the connivance or neglect of a person, being a director, manager, or similar office or of the undertaking, that person as well as the undertaking shall be guilty of an offence and shall liable to be proceeded against and punished as if he or she was guilty of the first mentioned offence. Laws that apply to the workplace also apply to committees and clubs. So that's all we're going to look at in the law. And just to let you know, this is where all of the information is on the Association of Irish Riding Clubs website, and you'll find it under AIRC.ie downloads. And if you do a search under safety, all of this information will come up. Anything that you need to carry out the role of the safety officer or um, committee responsibilities and or the rules is available here on the downloads. So just under the roles and responsibilities for the committees, the reference of the download that you should be looking for is D22/21. This document details the club chairperson's responsibility, the club secretaries, treasurer, grading officer, PRO, club designated liaison officer, safety officer, and the safeguarding officer. This is a new document that has gone up in the last few months, so is available and to everybody who wants to have a look at it. For this presentation, I'm only going to look at the safety officer and give you a bit more information around the safeguarding officer and the designated liaison officer. So you'll see that the club safety officer responsibilities are to ensure that all measures are up to date and implemented at all times, ensure all members of the committee are aware of their responsibilities, and report to the club committee. They should be involved in all committee activities to ensure that safety implications are addressed prior to agreement of activities being agreed. This meaning that it means then that the safety officer will be able to advise the committee on the activity that they're proposing to run and put in place the safety measures as the activity is being set up. The safety roles and rules and policies should be familiar with or the safety officer should be familiar with all AIRC policies, procedures and rules, ensure implemented and monitored across the club. Safety stewards, they should ensure that there are adequate safety stewards on site during all activities, carry out the risk assessments for all the activities, and ensure that all incidents or any incidents that happen at any event is reported to the head office within 14 days. Note that this is not only the safety officer responsibility, it is a responsibility of the whole committee. This role is further expanded in the document as discussed. Just looking at the safeguarding and designated liaison officer role, we seem to be getting a lot more clubs with members under 18. So if you have any members in your club under 18, you need to appoint a club safeguarding officer and a designated liaison person within the club. The designated liaison person in the club can be the safeguarding officer, depending on the number of vulnerable adults or members under the age of 18. There is a policy there on the AIRC website, and it's D7818, and there's a vetting and safeguarding policy D7716. As the safeguarding officer, you need to have attended safeguarding 1 and 2 courses, which would be available through sporting organisations and Horse Sport Ireland. You have to be Garda vetted through Horse Sport Ireland. And your role is to promote child safeguarding, encourage good practice, and ensure all who are working with children are recruited in line with policy. Make sure all are aware of how to contact the safeguarding officer. All are aware of the code of contact, and all are aware of how to raise concerns and how to deal with breaches. The DLP, or the designated liaison officer, is a liaison with outside agency and a resource person for anyone who has child safeguarding or welfare concerns. And it is not an investigative role. So if somebody comes to you with a concern, it is not an investigative role. It is rather their responsibility to ensure to raise the concerns with the relevant authorities. Okay, we look at hazard identification now. So hazard identification when you're running activities is anything that has the potential to cause harm. And some examples are, and this is not a non-exhaustive list. So when we're running our activities, we will have moving vehicles, spectators, first aid, welfare facilities, rubbish, toilets, fire, escape, children, horses, animals, people lunging, warm-up arena, competition arena, and your weather can be a hazard. So it is anything that has the potential to cause harm while you are running your event or your activity. So then we look at a risk assessment. So your risk assessment is something that is generally taken to be the probability of the harm that it will cause and the consequence of that harm. So that's what you're looking at when you're putting together your risk assessment. So what should be considered when completing a risk assessment of any activity will be the number of personnel exposed, the frequency and duration of exposure to that hazard, how likely is the effect of the failure of services, the likely effect of failure of plant and machinery and anything else that you use on the day of your activity. A risk is also your exposure to the elements. And then another risk is the protection offered by PPE, so your personal protective equipment, and usage rates of this personal protective equipment. So if you are using radios to communicate across the site, what's the likelihood of them not working because they have been used so much that the batteries are not recharging? So that's just an example. So this is a form that I use that I'm trying to use for you guys that will make it easier for you to understand on how to fill in and put together your risk assessment. So I'm using an example of a warm-up arena. And we will look at your hazard. So what is the risk? So what is the area of risk? Breaking down the hazard details. So who is the risk group? So who is exposed to this risk? Your actions planned. So what are you going to do to mitigate this risk? And then we look at the assessment based on a matrix. So I'll go through the matrix with you. And it is the likelihood. So it's a 3x3 matrix. So how likely is this incident to occur? Taking into effect the actions that you have put into place. So we'll go through this here. So for the likelihood. So you're looking at your warm-up arena as your hazard, and your hazard details are the horses in the arena, your ground conditions, and too many horses may be in the arena. This is again a non-exhaustive list, so I'm just using these three as an example. So who's exposed to this risk? The people exposed to this risk are all within the warm-up arena. So what actions have you got in place to lessen the likelihood and the severity of an injury happening to somebody? So you're going to inspect your ground conditions prior to the morning of the event. You're going to separate off your area for your warm-up. Only horses that are competing in that event will be allowed into that area, and you will use your left hand to left hand rule. And your numbers restricted in the warm-up arena depending on size of the arena. Most of these rules are in the AIRC rules book, which is reference D07/12. So it'll give you more information on the hazards and what you should be looking at in there. So we're looking at the likelihood matrix. So based on the fact that you have put all these items in place, so is it going to be a rare occurrence that the likelihood of the risk arising will be in exceptional circumstances? It's possible it might occur. And 3 is almost certain that it's expected to occur in most circumstances. So I have chosen that it's a 1 because we have all of those actions in place. We should have, and highly unlikely that we should have issues. So then we look at the severity of the injury that may take place. So you have a choice of slightly harmful, which would be 1. So that would be superficial injuries, minor cuts and bruises, eye irritation, and temporary discomfort. 2 would be harmful, so you have lacerations, burns, concussions, serious sprains or fractures. And 3 would be extremely harmful, which is amputations and fractures to the long bones. Taking into account of the precautions that you're taking, myself, I would put the severity of that at a 2, which would be sprains, fractures of short bones, or concussions. So that would give your risk level to be a 3. And if you look at the matrix in the bottom left-hand corner and you look on the down or the horizontal, you will see 1 is highly unlikely, so that's in a green. And if you go across the matrix at the top, under the horizontal is the severity. So if you look at a 2, so it's 2, and you go across, and it gives you a tolerable risk level. So then you ask yourself and your committee or anybody else that is helping you fill in this risk assessment, is this a tolerable risk? And under the classification, yes, it is a tolerable risk. Do you need to put further control measures in place? Under a tolerable risk, it states that the improvement is not mandatory, but record and monitoring required to ensure controls are maintained. So what I've put in here is further control measures to make sure that all of the precautions are adhered to, is a safety officer to be in place at the warm-up. And who is responsible for making that, making sure that it happens, would be the committee itself. So just an example that I completed back last year, it will be very COVID related because it's something that I did last year. We ran a 2-day event, and it was it included dressage, show jumping, showing and performance hunter working classes, and it took place over 2 days. So on the left hand side there, I put in there that the details of the event. I put a Google map in there so that I could put in where we were parking, where we were doing warm up, the rings and the numbers, so that it gave a good visual to everybody as to where everything was. Over on the right hand side, I've taken out people's names, is who the event organizers are or were, who was responsible for first aid, who the COVID officers were over the 2 days. And then we put in appendix documents to put together with the risk assessment, was the schedule of classes, including the times and competitors, who your volunteer schedule was, contact tracing sheets at the time, your completed COVID questionnaires at the time, and the event information, which gave the detail and breakdown of how each class was going to run, who was responsible for each class, and what clubs were running the different classes. So we looked at then the hazard coming in would be the entry. So this would be your horse boxes and vehicles coming in for entry. And the hazard was going to be people within 2 meters, and the risk group was going to be all people attending. The action planned was going to be all entries taking on plain sailing, information and rules to site given at entry, and contact tracing details gathered at this stage. Again, you will see that the risk level and severity were 1, which gave it a risk rating of 1, so it's a tolerable risk. And was there further action required? No, and it was actioned by the committee itself. Just again, I'm just going to give you some examples of what we did in the past. So on-site traffic and parking areas. So it was to make sure there was safe vehicle routes coming in and out of the site, highlighting your parking area, your spectators wandering in and around your parking, and then the big one, infection, COVID-19. So who was the risk group at the time? It was all attending. So the actions planned, which were rules that we had given to us by the AIRC, was 3-meter distancing between parking spaces to be observed, limit one person with each participant, and so on and so forth. And the likelihood was going to be a 2 because there was going to be a lot of people around the place. The severity would be a 1, so that gave you a risk level of 2, and it was a tolerable risk. No further action required, and to make sure all of these plans were adhered to, it was to be actioned by the committee, your COVID officers, and your volunteers tasked with entry. Just some different ones. So it was course building. So you had your hazard of manual handling, who was the risk group, the organizers of the event. Ensure that all buddied up with lifting heavy objects, adequate PPE, so your personal protective equipment, to be worn to prevent infection spread. Again, this is very COVID based. Again, it was a risk level of 4, so it's tolerable and no further actions were required. This one would have hit us all over the last couple of weeks. So your adverse weather. I know we've had to cancel some events over the last couple of weeks with the weather. So it was, your hazard is mainly horses and competitors, as the horse may slip if the ground is wet. Officials and public may be injured if they come into a contact with a spooky horse, as they can slip it themselves. The risk group was to be assessed on the day, and the decision to be made prior to event as to whether the process, if the weather was going to be adverse. The arena, again, you had to look at your ground conditions, your public access, your communications, your viewing area, and infection control. So inspect competition area before start, and then judges may be in arena, but adequate social distancing from participants. And then what I did over on the right-hand side was to list what competitions were going to be run in what arenas. So I hope that helps everybody fill in and complete a risk assessment. So just for yourselves, prior to running activity, you should use the safety checklist D07A14. I will go through it in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. And if you are using external first aid services, book in plenty of time. Medical cover on site, so ambulance is mandatory for any cross-country activities that you guys may be running. And note that if it leaves, your activity may not start again until there is another one there or the ambulance has returned. All other events, you need a doctor and a vet on call. Training. Use your trainers that are on your approved list of trainers where possible. So this would be your HSI, so your Horse Sport Ireland list of approved trainers, and your AIRC list of approved trainers, which is D70/12. These people are approved and they have their own insurance and they are qualified as first aid, with first aid. If you are using other trainers that are not on these approved lists, you will need to get evidence of their qualification and their insurance details. If you are using food vending on your site, you need to ensure that they are Food Safety Authority of Ireland registered, so that is your FSAI registered, and keep a copy of their insurance and certs that they are registered with the FSAI. If you are using photographers on the site when you are running your competitions, they will need to have their own public liability insurance. If you are getting trade stands in, they will also need to have their own public health insurance. You will need prior to running your activity to complete and document your risk assessments. And you will need to ensure that everybody knows their roles on the setup and of the running of the event themselves. What's a good guide for you guys when you are running an event is your checklist, and it's your health and safety checklist, and it's reference D07A/14, and it breaks down the requirements that you should look at and you should check in under all of these headings. So it looks at your administration. So that would be if you need planning permission, have you done it and what actions you need to do? Is there a fire safety cert required? Food hygiene registration, your safety statement, manual handling training, incident report forms when you have them on site. How are you going to communicate between people? Have you got high vis vests? Signage for coming in onto the site, do you need it? Do you need to put information out prior to the event? If you have narrow entrance ways, can you have a one-way system into the site and one-way system off the site? What insurance do you need to run this event? You need to look at your welfare. So if you have volunteers working on site all day, they will need to have toilets available to them. They will need to have drinking water available to them. Waste bins for your waste, and fire extinguishers if it's deemed required by your risk assessment. First aid and ambulance, again, depending on the activity that you're running. It looks at your showgrounds, your arena layout, how you're going to lay out your arena, your lunge areas, your practice areas, access to areas. How are you going to move people around your site without putting at risk to the riders or to the spectators? How are you parking people, etc. So then your site access, egress, trade area, your show day, what you need to do on your show day, and all of this is covered by all of your relevant legislation. Information that you need to display when you're running your events or your shows. You need to have the names and contact numbers on display for the following. Your safety officer. So who is your safety officer on the day that you're running your event? You may have a number of safety officers on the site and available to be contacted if anybody has any questions or has any complaints or queries. Who is the first aider for the event? So if you have a requirement for your first aid, how are they going to be contacted and who are they? If there's a possibility that you are going to have members under the age of 18 attending your events, you need to put on display who the safeguarding officer is and their policy and how they can be contacted. And then your risk assessment arrangements should be on display as well. Remember, we have a moral and legal responsibility to ensure the safety, health and welfare of all at our events. Our risk assessment is to be completed on all activities to ensure that all risks have been assessed and appropriate control measures and responsibilities are put in place. And please don't be frightened by what we've gone through today, because we're all doing it anyway, and we are just making sure that you are going to document it. So the response to that is document, document, document. You are never going to have enough documents for all of this. And all of information that you require on how to do your risk assessments and the rules and the policies are all available on the AIRC website. And you are all probably using the same venues, so you will get to know them and you can use the same format for most of your activities if you're using the same events. So thanks for taking the time, and if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Thanks for that, Sarah.
Thank you.
There has been some questions coming in. If anyone would like to ask any questions there, you can use the Q&A or raise your hand and we'll see if we can get to it that way. There has been some questions coming in,
Okay.
which I've kind of answered. Some were just asking if the webinar will be available. We are recording tonight's webinar, so that we'll be making it available on our website at some point in the coming days. As a safety officer, how do you know what the safety measures are, and is there a guidance document? Do you want to take a stab at that?
There is, as we went through the presentation there is all of the safety measures that you need to have are available on the AIRC website. So be it the venue checklist, be it the risk assessment document, be it your rules. So a lot of the safety requirements that you need to run for each, or you are required to have for each event, are available in the rules, which you guys put out over the last couple of weeks.
Thanks, Sarah. Another one then. As a safety officer, how do you know what the safety? Sorry, no, I read that already. If holding an event, is there a policy or rule with regards to having an ambulance at the event? And I did answer that, and it is outlined under Rule 18 in the rule book, which outlines what medical cover is required for our activities there. So that sets it out for the various types of competitions there. Another one then, where a club has no members under 18, they organise an event and a member from another club attends who provides a safeguarding officer. Is it the host club or the minors club? Now, we did clarify this with Horse Sport Ireland in the last few weeks, and it's actually the responsibility of the host club. Sorry, it's the responsibility of the members club and not the host club, according to Horse Sport Ireland on that one. Is there, as a matter of, is it possible to get copies of the risk assessment, please? We do have some sample risk assessments up on our website, so we will have those there. Can you clarify if jump cross is the same for cross country regarding ambulances? And yes, it is. Again, that falls under Rule 18, which you'll find it there, which outlines medical cover for competitions. And then one other question, they were looking for clarity around Derby show jumping in terms of ambulances. And again, Derby show jumping falls actually under, sorry, Derby competitions fall under show jumping rules, and therefore those rules apply, but it does depend on the type of fences that they're using in that course that they're suitable for Derby competitions and not just cross country. So that is something which clubs need to be aware of. There's more questions coming in. Sarah, sorry, is the site available as it would like to share it with the committee? We'll be making this presentation available online in the coming days. Could you explain Section 80 in the law, Sarah? There's a question there.
Okay, so basically this is a obviously Section 80, it's of the Act. So it basically means that we are responsible as a committee for all activities that happen within our remit. So if we're running an activity, we are responsible as a committee for that activity. If we don't follow the legislation, be it provide information, be it don't do a risk assessment, make sure we have competent, trained people as a as a volunteer or carrying activities on the site, we will probably be deemed to be negligent under Section 80 because we have let that happen without taking into account everything that is required under the law. So therefore, as a committee member, we are all liable to be prosecuted against if we have not complied with the law. I hope that helps. Does that make sense?
Thanks for that, Sarah. And just another few questions coming in here. Can a safety officer be appointed for an individual event who is not the club safety officer?
I have done that, and not as has done that. If I can't attend an event, I always have a stand-in in my club that can go to the event. I have had a number of my own committee and my own of my own committee have attended training that I have done in the past, and we will always rotate events between us.
Yeah.
So if this is available online, they can go through this, and if they're happy to be the safety officer on the day, that should be fine.
Yeah. We don't expect the safety officer to attend absolutely every single activity that the club organises in a year, because that would be a huge undertaking for one person. So it's quite acceptable for other people to act as a safety officer for an activity, so long as they know what they're at. And I suppose that's the key message. Some other questions coming in, Sarah. How can we check the requirements needed? Example, do I need fire safety or insurance to run this event, etc.?
Depends on, so if you're running an indoor event, this is just an example for fire extinguishers. If you're running an indoor event, and you have hay in the back of the arena, or you have cooking in the area, you just check to make sure that they have fire extinguishers there and that they're in date. Remember that the owner of the premises that you are using has a responsibility as well. So they can't be negligent on their requirements. So you're just checking that they have everything in place.
Very good, thanks, Sarah. And we've just answered that one, so we'll move on to the next one. Is a risk assessment for weekly lessons, is that required once per year per venue, or is it required every week?
If you know you're running it every week, just put it that it's weekly and it'll cover it all, unless anything changes in those coming in that activity.
I suppose it should be kind of monitored every few months, and if circumstances do change or something changes with the venue that they're using, well, then they need to update the risk assessment in that respect. Okay, thank you for that. One other question: is the guided vetting form for safeguarding available through the AIRC website or through the HSI? Or is there a link? Thanks. Yeah, it's all through the HSI website. You need to apply through them, but there is a link on our website. If you go to airc.ie/safeguarding, I think we have a link on that page there, which you'll find, but otherwise it is through the HSI website. So that is all the questions we have so far. Well, I suppose we'll just wait another little while to see if any more questions come in, Sarah. Is there anything else you want to add?
No. Just on screen there we have to be practical as well. So just on screen there is a cowboy after an occupational safety and health advisor got at them. So we don't want to become that person either.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we haven't any other questions come in, so that may be it. If anyone has any questions that they want to ask, now is the time to do it. Or you might be in the clear, Sarah.
I see 3 coming up there.
There's one there. Yeah, is there a standard AIRC incident report form?
There is, yeah.
Yeah,
it is. I'll tell you, I have it printed off. Oh no, I don't have it printed off. It's on the presentation earlier. You might know the number off by heart, David.
I don't know it off by heart, but it is on the website. Go to downloads, AIRC/downloads, and just type in safety, and it will all appear there for you regarding that. There is, I think, 5 or 6 bullet points in terms of what you should do in the event of an accident, as well as the incident report form. So it's important that you read both of those documents, and it's no harm to print it off and have it easily accessible when you're running an activity there, to have that. So there are certain things in that I don't have it to hand, but if an accident happens, obviously you go and you deal with the person involved, and if there's loose horses and that kind of thing. But there's certain things we would ask you to do slightly after the accident, and that's one of them is just to take a photograph of where the incident occurred. So there's a record of it, and you can send that along with the incident report form to us. So again, it's about 1 or 2 pages long. It's not that detailed, but it does give you a few helpful hints as to what to do if an accident happens, and the form is there as well. So just go to airc.ie/downloads.
And if you do a search under safety, it's the first 2 documents that come up.
Yeah. One there, if the fire extinguishers are out of date, Linda, that's really an issue for the
venue
proprietor, really. It's not so much something that what should they do, I suppose, in that instance?
They should probably highlight it to the venue owner and ask them would they get them updated. I know, and because I'm coming from a workplace, I bring fire extinguishers with me. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit anal. I'm a little bit anal on it. They come out.
Okay, just a few people are just thanking us for the seminar, and thank you for the feedback. We do appreciate that.
Yeah.
When is the first aid officer required? Only shows or also training?
For me, I would always make sure there's a first aid officer. If you're using at all events, so if you're using, for me, if you're using a trainer off your approved list, they are first aid trained. So that's the advantage in using the trainers that are on either the Horse Sport Ireland list or on your AIRC approved list of trainers. As I said, they've their own insurance and they've their own first aid.
And again, that goes back to Rule 18, which is medical cover. And this rule has been mentioned quite a lot this evening. I'll just read the rule. It says, Rule 18, medical cover for cross-country competitions, i.e. hunter trials, horse trials, cross jump. The organising club must ensure that there's an ambulance on course prior to the event. If the ambulance has to leave the field at any time, the event must be suspended until it returns. The doctor and vet must be on call. For all other events, it's mandatory to have medical personnel present and a vet on call. It's advisable to have an ambulance on the ground. So what we're saying there is first aiders, essentially for anything bar cross-country competitions. And it's important that they're there. So if there is any activity happening, including training, it is important to have a first aider there. And as you said, any instructor on our list has first aid.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if there's a few more here now coming in. Some of the questions are very good. If hospital has them captured and available, we'll be making the presentation available. Can you just go back? Can you go back to the risk assessment numbers, Sarah?
Yeah, sure. I can go back here on the presentation. Yeah. It's taking a while. And what I can do is I have and I think I sent it to you before, David, is just like a little screenshot of all of this matrix.
Yeah.
So I can say that you will put that up on the website, sorry.
Yeah, we can
so
put
that
that
it's
up on the
available
website,
for everybody. So which one do you want? Okay, so that's the first one. Your likelihood matrix.
I suppose if you want to just go back over that section, maybe it's only a couple of slides, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Look, when we look at it, you're detailing. You basically what I would say, you can never have too much documentation. So whatever you think is a risk, be it small, little, large, or whatever, document it so that you won't get into trouble for putting too much information together. So what you're looking at is you're putting your actions planned down here in your tab number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're looking at the likelihood. So how likely is it that, this is the page before, sorry, how likely is it that something is going to happen? How likely do you think something is going to happen based on the actions that you have put in place or you are planning to put in place? So will it be based rare, which means that it may occur in exceptional circumstances, again, based on the actions that you've put in place? Is it possible or is it almost certain? So that's 1, 2, and a 3. So you would put that in there under likelihood. So for me, under this, I would put it down as a 1, because I think if we follow the plans that we have in place, the likelihood is going to be rare that we'll have an issue with that activity. Okay. Then, yeah, I'll just go through the 3, and then we can look at it again. So then what you look at is the severity. So this is good. I find this good because it gives you an idea of, instead of going, oh my God, how am I going to rate this? It gives you an idea on how to rate it. So it tells you if it's a superficial injury, if it's a harmful injury, so that would be lacerations, burns, or extremely harmful, which would also look at your fatalities if you think, or your amputations or fractures to the long bones. So that will give you your severity rating, based again on the plans that you have in place. So that'll give you your risk level. So if you look at the vertical, which is your likelihood, so we've said it's highly unlikely. And if you go across, the horizontal is your severity. And we've said there's a possibility that it could be harmful. So that gives you a risk level of 3. And we are asking ourselves, is that tolerable? Are we happy to accept that risk as it is. So then under tolerable, it's saying it's an improvement, is not mandatory, so we don't need to do any more, but record and monitor to ensure existing controls are maintained. Okay, is that okay?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, Anthony can come back to us on the chat, on the question there if he wants further clarification on that. Just another question here: can you use other trainers that aren't on the AIRC list? And the answer to that is yes.
Yes.
But they must conform to the same criteria. So we have a policy document there, which again is about 2 or 3 pages long in respect of trainers and instructors. The reference number is D70/12. Go onto our website, go to airc.ie/instructors, and you'll find a link to the document there, and you'll be able to download that. And it's only 2 or 3 pages long. The instructors have to conform to the same criteria whether they're on our list or not, and that's in our rules as well. Yeah. The rule you're looking for is rule, so I have it here now, it's rule 5.6, and that just says any instructor or trainer engaged in training riding club members at a riding club activity must hold a recognized qualification or have suitable experience in accordance with the criteria published in document D70/12. So go onto the website, download the document. Again, it's only a couple of pages long, and give that a read. Another question there, there is, hi, if a club are having a training afternoon organized in a proper riding establishment, does the safety officer have to be present for that, or is the trainer enough if he has his first aid cert and insurance and the establishment is insured as well?
I have left it in my area, or not in my area, in my club, that we would have somebody there to act as a safety officer. They may be attending and riding in the event, but we will also have them there, and we have them named on the risk assessment as them being there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, best practice would, I suppose, dictate that someone really should be there from the club to oversee it. But look, we can understand if it's a small lesson, there's only not so many there, maybe 4 or that in a lesson, it's under the control of the instructor. Well, then if the instructor is happy to take on the responsibility for that activity, it's okay. But really, best practice would dictate that someone is there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going here. There's a few more. Thanks a million. Thank you. This feedback for us. What health checks do we need to make of venue owners? Are there minimum questions that we need to ask, e.g., they could have hazardous material on site that we would not necessarily see?
If we don't see it and we don't have access to it, it should be okay.
It's not our concern, really. Yeah.
No. For the venue, you're checking that they have adequate insurance, and you're going in to ask them what areas we have access to or we don't have access to, and the areas that we have access to, if you know the venue or you have to visit the venue to check that, if there's hazardous materials in the area that we have access to, you should ask them to remove it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Again, I suppose like it's a bit of common sense around that. Like you have to be, you can't go in and start inspecting the whole premises top to bottom. Like you only really are concerned with the areas you have access to, you know, as you said, and that's your primary concern. Another one there, what is an incident that requires reporting? Is it just if someone is hurt, for example, if a member has a minor fall during club training and is unhurt, unable to continue, does this need to be reported? What's your take on that, Sarah?
I know we report, well, I would report everything. So it's looking at your near misses as well. So you have somebody that's fallen off. In a show situation, anybody that's fallen off, we've reported it, whether there has been an injury or not. If it's in a training, we keep a record of it and only report if there's an injury. I don't know what your view on that is, David.
I suppose from our perspective, yeah, I suppose all incidents should be noted at club level anyway. But in terms of the incident report form to us, we would really only require it if the individual requires medical attention of any sort, and that's the kind of rule of thumb we go by. So if they require medical attention of any sort, it should be notified to us, and that should be sent in to us I think it's
Within
within 14 days
yeah.
of the incident occurring, like, you know.
What I would suggest is to keep a note of anything that happens in your club activities.
Yeah.
People do have a long period of time in which to come back if they want to go further. So it's just a good idea, if there's any type of, not necessarily an injury issue, just to record it and keep a note of it.
The statute of limitations, as far as I know, is 2 years. So that means that if an incident happens, a member or the individual has up to 2 years to come back about that. So,
they do,
you know, you need to be aware of that. So it is important to document everything effectively. And as I say, like, notify us of incidents as they occur, particularly those requiring medical attention. We have another one then. There's another person not quite understanding the matrix. Sarah, do you want to take another stab at that?
Yeah, sure. So okay, we'll go back to the start. Hold on. It probably would look better, or be better, easier to understand if all the matrices were on one page. So maybe we can send it out after.
We'll put it up on the website.
So basically what we're looking at again is the likelihood. So we know the risk assessment is based on the likelihood of something occurring and the severity of the outcome. So how injured will a person be? So your likelihood, I have to go back another page, is based on, so everything is based on, your risk assessment is based on the plans or the actions you are going to put in place to prevent the hazard happening. So this is the activity that will cause the harm. How are we going to prevent that causing harm? So based on the plans that you have in place to prevent it, we'll look at your likelihood of something happening. So based on that, it should, if you have it planned right, be a 1, as in, so based on your actions, the outcome should be rare. So somebody falling off and getting hurt in a warm-up arena, the example we have here, should be rare in occurrence because we have put all these actions in place. So then if you look at that, your severity, and then we're looking at the severity now. So how injured will somebody become based on the actions that we have put in place? So it should be only a fracture, the harmful. So it should only be a fracture or a serious sprain, or what we have there under harmful. So that's where I have put it as the severity would be a 2, which would be harmful. If, of course, you had 50 horses in the warm-up arena, you're letting them go willy-nilly all over the place, you probably have a risk or a severity much higher, which would be an extremely harmful. So you could have fractures to long bones, or you could have a fatality as such. So that will give you your 3 and your 1 and your 2, which is your likelihood and your severity. You're multiplying the 2 of them again together, which is a 3. And again, or you can use the matrix here, which will be your horizontal is your severity and your vertical is your likelihood. So that's your 1, which is your likelihood on the vertical, and your horizontal is your severity, which we've said is harmful. So if you go down the matrix there, it gives you a tolerable risk. Okay, I hope everybody understands that now. Which then, when you look at the risk level, so tolerable under the on the left hand side there is improvement not mandatory, but record everything that you have put in place.
Okay.
Do people understand that?
Hopefully. Thanks, Sarah. I'll move on to another few questions that have come in there. Yeah. So if someone had a fall and went to hospital the next day, what's the protocol there? What would you suggest there?
They should come back to you and let you know this. And if you were recording your accidents on the day of the event anyway, you should have a note of it, which means when they should come back to you and let you know that they went to hospital the next day, which means then you can go back and fill in your accident report form and send it in to you guys, because they have gone to hospital based on the incident the day before at the event. Yeah.
Great. If a person's riding a young horse at a show, should the safety officer be informed, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
No, either the way. It's more so like there's personal responsibility there.
Yeah.
It's the horse under the rider's care. It's not your job to look after their safety. In that respect, it's up to the members riding the horse, really, to be honest with that. Just on some other questions, just on the named person, if the safeguarding officer is from the non-host club, are they all to be named? I wonder, is that in regards to the safeguarding statement? Sarah, would that be right?
Yeah, I think what we said there, what you answered a question there earlier, that if the club has an under 18, it's the club's responsibility to have the safeguarding officer.
Yeah.
So if you as a club are running an event with an under 18 person in your club, that's where you should put on display this information, and you should have that information available to your club members.
Yes.
If you as a as an attendee to that club's event and you witness a safeguarding issue, you should report it to the hosting club's safeguarding officer, whose information will be on display.
Okay. And another one on this similar thread here. How will a host club know, or did the host club need to know, if there's an under 18 attending? And just to say, it's not all just under 18s, it's also vulnerable adults fall under this as well. So every time we mention under 18s, it also refers to
vulnerable adults. Yeah.
It also refers to vulnerable adults, just to clarify that. So so I'll start again. How will a host club know, or do the host club need to know if there's an under 18 attending a show, and do they need to have anything in place if the host club does not have under 18s or vulnerable adults in their club?
We are saying, I think, no, it's the club that has the vulnerable or under 18 that has to have the safeguarding officer.
Also, they asked the question, also, is the statute of limitations different for under 18s, as it's a lot longer for bunch club members? And we should clarify, yes, it is actually longer. Yeah. So what happens is, it's as far as my understanding of it is the statute of limitations runs from whatever age the incident happens. So for us, currently it's 17 years old. So it's going to be, if they're 17 and they're involved in an incident, the statute of limitations will be for 3 years, because it's until they're 18 plus 2 years after that. Yeah, that's my understanding on that. Some more questions here. How long would you recommend keeping records of falls or incidents in club activities, even if there's no medical attention required? For the statute time. Yeah. Exactly. So you're talking either 2 to 3 years then, I suppose, depending if there's under 18s or vulnerable adults in that. Okay. Let's see now. Is there some more here? Is the likelihood multiplied by the severity? This is regarding the matrix. Is the likelihood multiplied by the severity or added to get the risk level? Sorry, multiplied. Multiplied. Yeah. Okay. I hope that answers that. Tina, it's that part I'm confused. Now that came in, I don't know which they're referring to. I presume it's the matrix again. Yeah. Do you add up, here's another question, do you add up the likelihood, severity and risk level to get the risk tolerable number? You can either, we're multiplying it, or if you multiply, so if you look at your, I want to make it complicated now. If you, what I'm going to say is look at the chart here that I have on the screen on the right hand side. You are looking at, there's 2 ways of doing it. I would do it by multiply it, and 3 would, to me, would be a tolerable risk. But if you, until you get comfortable with doing risk assessments, if you take the chart that's on the right of the screen and you go down the horizontal, which is your highly unlikely, which is your 1, and your across the vertical, which would be your severity,
What I might do is when I'm putting, David, I might put together a better graphic for this, and it'll just, I will put on the vertical your severity, and on the likelihood your on the horizontal, and then it'll just make it easier for people to understand.
Yeah, I think the person has come back and said they think they've got it now. They're saying multiply likelihood by severity, and that equals the risk level. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Okay. We're reaching the end. I think. Does each club need their own safety statement?
Probably yes, would be the answer. And be it a safety statement, be it just even documenting who the committee members are, but not necessarily the committee members, but what the roles are within the committee, and who is responsible for the training, your etc. You have a template there on the website, don't you?
I'm not so sure of a template for club safety statements now. We have our own safety statement, which we would have used as a cover for all of activities within the organisation.
Yeah. I can look at putting together a template, and we can put that up. Yeah.
I'm assuming it will be a much smaller document anyway.
Oh yes.
It might be no harm to have a template if you could look at that maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, they just come back to the National AIRC safety statement suffice. So I think we've kind of just answered that there.
Yeah.
One more question. So is it the risk level on the chart on screen now, not 2 rather than 3? Does that make sense to you?
The risk level. Okay. Yeah. Depending on how you follow it, if you follow the chart that I have on the right hand side of the screen, it should be 2, because it's the tolerable risk.
Okay.
I just multiplied the two of them together, and I should have put it in as 2. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well that's fine. We won't hold it against you tonight. Sarah, thanks for that. One has just come in there. Yeah, no, that's grand. I think we're done with that. So look, I think I'll just hand us over to Tony there to, have you anything else you want to add, Sarah, before we wrap up?
No, just remember everything is there on the AIRC website. You can reach out to me if you have any questions, or if we run through risk assessments and you're going through them and you're having difficulty doing them, just send David an email and he can send it on to me if he wants to question, if we want to question it.
Yeah, it's best if anyone has questions to get in touch with the office. If you send them to info@airc.ie, and we'll get in touch with Sarah regarding that. Thanks, Sarah, so much. I'm going to hand over to Tony there for some closing remarks. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to thank Sarah for putting together a very comprehensive safety seminar for us. I'm sure you all have found it very useful going on the type of questions that was coming in. I do hope that most of them have been answered, which I think they have. As I said at the start, that really it's up to every one of us to be responsible for our own safety and not really rely on everybody else to mind us, but then we have to have all those in place so that our sport can be as safe as is possible. Thank you all very much for attending. I do hope that you found it useful. If you have other questions, you can email them in and we will try to answer them in due course. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Good night. Keep safe. Keep well.